I was thinking the other day that gratitude is the most underdeveloped spiritual discipline. And I was reminded of this when I was having a good conversation with my good friend Brian from Humans of Public Service. And he asked me this question, which threw me for a loop. He said, when was the first time you worked in the public sector for the government? And I was about to say something like the U.S. Agency for International Development. And then I remembered, wait a minute, I used to be a public school teacher, and they're actually public servants. They get paid by the government. My name is Victor Udoewa. I worked at the CDC in the Office of Public Health Data Surveillance and Technology, and I served as a principal service designer, helping to design all of the machine learning, AI, and data interoperability products and services, as well as working on designing a one CDC data platform and redesigning the way health data flows throughout the health ecosystem. So my first public sector job was for the state of Texas as a teacher at a public charter school. And my kids loved having me as a teacher for a number of reasons, but I'll mention two. The first was that they loved having a teacher who was something else besides being a teacher. And I had been a computational engineer and scientist, which they loved. But the second was that I had ambition and goals in addition to being a teacher. I actually wanted to be an astronaut. And I told them this because I wanted to model what it meant to have a goal and make a plan and try to create steps to reach that plan. But back then in those days, I think a lot about this today, that the people that we looked to for models were the military. Thank you for your service. We clap for them at the airport. We move aside and let them get to the front of the line. And especially after 9/11, the police, firefighters. But we didn't really do that for teachers. We value teachers as a mode to get to where we need to get to, but they weren't really models of who we wanted to be or what we wanted to become. And so I was trying to model that and model what it meant to do that type of work. So no one thought of the teachers as an actual model of who we wanted to be and what we wanted to become. The teachers were just a pathway to help these students get to the model, to get to the particular career or their idea of flourishing. And so I stayed in touch with a number of those students and saw some of those students come over to my house on spring break when they went to college and stay with my family. Or some of those students went to graduate school in my city, and I stayed in touch with many of them. But even a few of them became civic technologists and moved into the area or the space of civic design and civic innovation. And I remember I was having a conversation with one of them, and we were just talking, and she was asking me about, hey, tell me about some of the work you're doing. And let's mention some projects here or mention some projects there. And I mentioned PubMed. It's the world's largest biomedical journal citation database. It's the flagship product of the National Institutes of Health. And when I mentioned it, she said, what? Did you say PubMed? And I said, yeah, I said PubMed. And she said, I know PubMed. I've been a patient advocate, a health advocate for someone in my family who's been quite sick. I remember what it used to look like. Wait, you were part of the group that helped change that? And I said, yeah, we worked on it and helped redesign it. And she said, thank you for your service. There was something about that because up to that point, I had never heard that for my work in the public sector, whether as a school teacher or working at the U.S. Agency for International Development or Homeland Security, etc. And it just hit me. It hit me in a certain way. I used to live in South Africa, and in one of the languages that I spoke there, there's a way of responding to the question of how are you? And one of the responses I'm translating into English we would say is, I'm here. But another one of the responses we would say is, we are here. And it felt a little bit like that, like, I see you. We're here. I know what you're doing. I acknowledge it and I appreciate you. And it hit me so hard that from that moment on, I began to thank every single public sector, public servant person that I knew, because I understood that they often go around doing things that people don't see, that are invisible, and in some ways are thankless. And I wanted to know, no, no, no. We are thankful for the work that you do. So I would go around and I started telling people, and I saw my neighbor, and one day we were talking, and he said he's an arborist with the city of DC. I said, city of DC, thank you for your service. And he looked at me quite strange because he wasn't used to doing that. But I got him on the bandwagon and we began to do it for person after person after person. And I just wanted to say that if you are one of those people who work in the public sector and you have been doing work that, is invisible or people don't realize, and you haven't ever been thanked, I want to thank you because we don't just notice that there is impactful work that it's done when problems get fixed, but I am noticing and learning to notice that there's impactful work when we don't even notice that there's a service going on because there are no problems. So thank you for your service. Thank you for all you do. And if no one has ever told you that you're valuable, you're appreciated. And I'm thankful for the ways that you have helped to facilitate our lives and what it means to live a flourishing and thriving life.